I had been mindlessly scrolling through my phone, watching random videos, when an ad popped up. Detect ghosts within 2 meters. It blared in bold letters, followed by eerie music. It looked ridiculous, probably just another gimmick. But I love horror. I was genuinely curious to see how detecting a nearby ghost would scare me. I downloaded the app. As the screen loaded, the app explained how it worked. Something about EMF readings and special sensors. I wasn't paying attention. I was just ready to laugh at how fake it would be. The app booted up and a radar-like interface appeared on my phone. I rolled my eyes. "Yeah, sure," I muttered. For a minute, nothing happened. The screen stayed blank as I pointed it around the living room. I was about to delete it when the phone vibrated in my hand. "Ghost detected." I froze. The words blinked at me, the phone emitting a soft beep. Okay, that's creepy, I thought, but it was just a coincidence. Then I heard it, a faint clatter, the unmistakable sound of a dish hitting the floor in the kitchen. My skin prickled, the hairs on my neck standing on end. Slowly, I clutched my phone and made my way to the kitchen. It was probably just the wind or a breeze from an open window, nothing more. But when I stepped into the room, everything was in place, except for a shattered bowl on the floor. No big deal. It must have been too close to the edge, I told myself. I knelt down to pick up the pieces, muttering under my breath about clumsy accidents, but something felt off. The windows were closed, and there wasn't a breeze. Just as I was gathering the shards, I noticed movement. Something small, pale, and thin. My heart stopped. Right there, just inches from my hand, a long, bony hand was gathering grains of rice from the shattered bowl. The hand was skeletal, fingers impossibly long, the nails cracked and yellowed. I held my breath as the hand slowly, deliberately pulled back into the shadows under the kitchen counter. My eyes followed it, and there, in the corner by the refrigerator, something was crouched in the darkness. It was hunched, its body grotesquely thin, limbs too long for its frame. Its face, pale and gaunt, with hollow, sunken eyes, turned toward me, and in its hand, it was holding a single grain of rice, which it slowly, disgustingly brought to its mouth and ate. I stood paralyzed, my legs trembling. The thing's eyes, dead, hollow pits, locked onto mine. It reached out again, its arms impossibly long, fingers stretching toward the shattered remains of the bowl, plucking at the rice like a starving animal. I bolted. Without thinking, I ran out of the kitchen, my heart pounding so loud I thought it might burst. My mind raced. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. I had probably imagined it. After all, I had just watched a horror movie. Yeah, that had to be it. But then my phone buzzed again. Ghost detected. The message made my blood run cold. No, not again. I was still standing in the hallway, catching my breath, when I heard the faint creak of a cabinet door. Slowly, I peeked into the living room. My TV drawer door was wide open. I hadn't touched it. I stepped closer, the tension building in my chest. That's when I noticed the drawer under the TV, shaking violently as if something inside was trying to break free. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, and stepped closer. The rattling grew more frantic, the drawer slamming against the cabinet as though it were possessed. My hand hovered over the handle, trembling as I debated whether or not to open it. Before I could make a decision, the drawer burst open with a loud bang and something came crawling out. I stumbled back, my legs barely holding me up. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be real. Human heads, disembodied, their eyes wide open and mouths agape, were spilling out of the drawer, rolling across the floor. But they didn't stop at the floor. No, they lifted, hovering in the air like grotesque balloons, their eyes fixed on me as they floated toward the ceiling. I backed into the wall, my heart hammering in my chest. One of the heads twitched, its mouth stretching into a ghastly grin. My breath caught in my throat as I scrambled to get to my bedroom in my panic. The heads floated closer, circling above me like vultures waiting for me to drop. I could hear the faint, garbled whispers escaping their lips, but I couldn't understand a word. All I knew was that I had to get out of there. I slammed the door shut, gasping for breath. I heard nothing more and breathed a sigh of relief. My phone buzzed again, many times its vibration pulling my attention back to the screen. I hesitated for a second before glancing down. Ghost detected. The words sent a chill down my spine. I decided to delete the app. It seemed like I had been on my phone for too long, and my mind was no longer clear. I should get some sleep. I've always known my girlfriend Caitlin wears too much makeup. I'm not talking about a bit of mascara and some lipstick. No, Caitlin layers on foundation, concealer, and God knows what else until her face looks like a porcelain mask. It's not just her face, either. Her neck and chest are also meticulously coated, making her look almost like a painted doll. But here's the thing. I've never seen her without it. We've been dating for almost a year, and I'm crazy about her. She's smart, funny, and beautiful. At least I think she is, under all that makeup. But her obsession with never being seen without it has started to strain our relationship. She avoids any activity that might smudge her makeup, which includes not just swimming or running, but even simple things like getting caught in the rain, touching her face, or kissing for more than a few seconds. It's like she's always hiding something. One night, I decided enough was enough. We were staying at my parents' house, and I had stayed up late to finish some work. After a few beers, I made up my mind. I was going to see Caitlin without her makeup. I had to know what she was hiding. I sneaked into my mum's bathroom and grabbed some cleanser and cotton pads. My heart pounded as I crept back to the bedroom where Caitlin was sleeping. Her makeup had left orange stains on the white sheets. I perched on the edge of the bed and lightly dabbed a cotton pad on her cheek. Nothing happened. I wiped harder. Still nothing. The makeup came off on the pad, but her face looked exactly the same. I took another pad and continued, wiping the same spot over and over. Then I saw it. A patch of redness under the layers. It looked like raw flesh. No skin, just muscle and tissue. Panic surged through me. What the hell was I looking at? Suddenly, Caitlin shifted and her eyes snapped open, wide with panic.
Tom! What are you doing?
She demanded, sitting up and cupping her face. She felt the bare patch I'd uncovered and screamed.
What have you done?
She bolted out of bed and ran to the mirror, staring at the damage in horror. Then she turned to me, eyes wild.
You didn't touch it, did you?
Touch what? I stammered, utterly confused.
That!
She shouted, pointing to the exposed flesh on her cheek. I don't know, I stuttered. Why? But she wasn't listening. She tore out of the room and disappeared down the hallway. I sat there, stunned, until she came back, clutching a kitchen knife. Whoa, whoa, I yelled. What are you doing with that?
Shut up!
She snapped.
Which hand did you use?
I pointed to my right hand, too shocked to do anything else.
How long ago?
Maybe 10 minutes? I squeaked. Her eyes widened in terror.
It's too late! Your whole arm must go!
I scrambled off the bed, backing away. "You can't cut off my arm,"
I have to,
she insisted.
or the infection will spread.
Jesus Christ! What infection? Caitlin, what are you talking about?
Tom, please, it has to be done now.
I wasn't about to let her amputate my arm. I fled the room, slamming the door behind me and locking it. She pounded on the door, screaming to be let out, but I ignored her. My parents, woken by the commotion, came out of their bedroom, but I told them we'd had an argument and they went back to bed. I spent the night on the couch, but I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what had happened. Why did Caitlin react that way? What was wrong with her skin? In the morning, I cautiously went back upstairs. I unlocked the bedroom door, armed with a knife just in case. But when I opened it, Caitlin was sitting on the edge of the bed, facing the wall. She had reapplied her makeup, and her face was once again a flawless mask. "Caitlin," I ventured. She didn't respond at first. Then she turned to me, eyes cold and distant.
I don't think this is going to work out, Tom.
"What? Why?" I asked, my heart sinking.
You're not trustworthy.
She replied.
You knew I didn't want you to see me without makeup, and you did it anyway.
"I just wanted to help you," I protested. "I didn't know about whatever this is." She shook her head.
It doesn't matter. It's over.
I was stunned. "But Caitlin, I love you." She gave me an eerily smile.
Yeah, well, looks like it's your problem now, too.
She handed me a bottle of foundation.
You'll need this,
she said, and then she was gone. I stared at the bottle in disbelief. What was I supposed to do with it? I tossed it in the trash and went downstairs. My mind a whirlwind of confusion and fear. In the kitchen, my mum was making breakfast. As soon as she saw me, she gasped and dropped a plate. "Tom, what happened to your face?" I ran to the mirror in the hallway. My reflection stared back at me, horrified. A patch of my skin was missing, replaced by raw red flesh, the same as Caitlin's. I touched the spot, my fingers trembling. It was spreading, and at that moment, I understood. Caitlin's secret was now mine to bear. The infection, whatever it was, had passed to me. I was becoming like Caitlin, and there was nothing I could do to stop it.
I never expected to become friends with someone like Thomas. As desk buddies, our conversations were mostly one-sided, with me doing most of the talking. Thomas was shy and strangely odd, but over time, he began to open up. He smiled more often, though there was something unsettling about his smile that I couldn't quite shake. One day, out of the blue, Thomas invited me to his house for a sleepover. I hesitated at first, but my curiosity about his mysterious family got the better of me. When I arrived, Thomas's parents greeted me with the same unsettling smiles I had seen on his face. They were overly polite, their eyes too wide, and their voices carrying an unnatural cheerfulness that made my skin crawl. During dinner, I could hardly focus on the food because I kept hearing something odd. A faint, distant crying, as if a child were sobbing somewhere in the house. No one else seemed to notice, and when I mentioned it to Thomas, he just shrugged and told me not to worry. After his parents went to bed, Thomas turned to me with a grin.
"Hey, want to see my old friend?"
His voice was playful, but there was an edge to it that made my stomach twist. I hesitated, but I didn't want to seem scared. "Sure," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. We tiptoed through the dark hallway, the only light coming from the moon outside. I was most surprised by how the Donovan family seemed to have a thing for collecting mirrors, as they were lined up along the entire hallway. As we approached a large draped object at the end of the hall, the crying I'd heard earlier grew louder. My heart pounded in my chest. This was no trick of the imagination. Thomas stopped and whispered,
"Don't worry if he looks at you, just make sure you look away fast. You'll be fine as long as you look away fast."
I didn't understand what he meant, but before I could ask, he pulled the sheet back, revealing the mirror's intricate carvings. The crying was coming from inside the mirror, but there was no one else in the room. I stared at the glass, trying to make sense of what I was seeing or not seeing. My reflection was missing, replaced by the image of a boy I didn't recognize, standing in the corner of the mirrored space. I wanted to believe it was some sort of optical illusion, but when the boy turned around and started walking toward me, I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. "Thomas, who is that?" But Thomas didn't answer. When the boy's face came into view, I felt my blood turn to ice. His features were stretched and distorted, like those in a funhouse mirror, and his lips twisted into a grotesque smile as he pressed his hands against the glass. Suddenly, his fingers started pushing through the mirror's surface, reaching out toward me. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, as the boy's long, thin arms stretched toward my face.
"Ryan, look away!"
Thomas shouted, grabbing my arm and yanking me back. I stumbled away from the mirror, gasping for breath. I heard a faint giggle from behind the glass as the boy slowly withdrew, his smile never fading.
"We have to go!"
Thomas said urgently, pulling me back down the hall. We rushed back to his room where Thomas quickly locked the door behind us. I wanted to ask a million questions, but the look on Thomas's face told me now wasn't the time. We climbed into bed, but there was no way I could sleep after what I'd just seen. As Thomas's breathing evened out beside me, I knew I couldn't stay in that house. Whatever was in that mirror, it wasn't human. I waited until I was sure Thomas was asleep before quietly slipping out of bed. I tiptoed to the door and carefully opened it. As I crept toward the stairs, just as I reached the top, heavy footsteps echoed behind me. Panicking, I ducked behind the nearest door, peeking through a narrow gap. Mr. Donovan, Thomas's father, marched past, carrying something rectangular under his arm. The faint tinkling of glass reached my ears as he headed toward Thomas's room. My stomach lurched. I didn't want to know what he was planning. Suddenly, I heard Mr. Donovan shout,
"He's gone!"
Panic surged through me. I sprinted through the hallway where I heard the cries of children and the clattering of glass against wood. I finally reached the garage and bolted inside, slamming the door behind me. My hands trembled as I grabbed my bike and wheeled it to the door, pressed the button to open the garage door. Just as I managed to get it open, I saw Mr. Donovan standing in the doorway, his face twisted in anger. For the first time, he wasn't smiling. He rushed toward me. In his rush, he stumbled, and the mirror he carried crashed to the floor, shattering into pieces. The room filled with eerie laughter. When I looked back, I saw long, thin arms reaching out from the broken glass, grasping at Mr. Donovan. The lights flickered wildly as his screams filled the garage, but I didn't stay to watch. I jumped on my bike and pedaled as fast as I could, speeding down the driveway and away from that cursed house.